The camera lights felt different that night on The Tonight Show. Jimmy Fallon sat across from Dr. Chen, one of the country's most celebrated heart surgeons, but something was wrong. Her hands, the same hands that had saved over 3,000 lives, trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass. The audience didn't notice. Jimmy did. "So, Dr. Chen," Jimmy began with his trademark warmth, "you've been performing heart surgery for 15 years. That's incredible. What got you into cardiac surgery?" Dr. Chen smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I wanted to fix broken hearts," she said softly, "literally." The audience chuckled, but Jimmy caught something in her tone. Behind the practiced response was a weight that seemed too heavy for someone who should be celebrating a lifetime of success. At 42, Dr. Chen was at the peak of her career. She'd been featured on magazine covers, had written best-selling books about cardiac innovation, and had pioneered surgical techniques that were now taught in medical schools worldwide. But she hadn't operated in 6 months. "That's beautiful," Jimmy replied, leaning forward slightly. "And you saved so many lives. That must feel amazing." Dr. Chen's smile flickered. For just a moment, her professional composure cracked. "It did," she whispered, then caught herself. "It does. It's an incredible privilege." The correction was subtle, but Jimmy's instincts kicked in. In his years of hosting, he'd learned to read the spaces between words, the pauses that said more than any statement. Something had changed her, from present tense to past tense, and then back again. "You know," Jimmy said, his voice gentler now, "I've always wondered what it's like to hold someone's heart in your hands. That must be the most intimate moment imaginable." Dr. Chen's composure shattered completely. Her eyes filled with tears so suddenly that even she seemed surprised. The studio audience, sensing something shift, grew quieter. The usual energy of late-night television transformed into something more sacred. "I'm sorry," Dr. Chen said, reaching for a tissue. "I thought I could do this." Jimmy didn't hesitate. He stood up from behind his desk, walked around to where she sat, and knelt beside her chair. The cameras kept rolling, but this was no longer television. This was human connection in its purest form. "Hey," Jimmy said softly, his voice barely audible to the studio audience, but picked up clearly by the microphones. "What's going on?" Dr. Chen looked at him, and in that moment, the accomplished surgeon disappeared. What remained was a woman carrying a burden too heavy for anyone to bear alone. "I lost someone," she whispered, 3 months ago. "A little girl, 7 years old." The studio fell completely silent. Even the Roots, Jimmy's house band, seemed to sense that music had no place in this moment. Jimmy stayed kneeling beside her chair, his full attention focused on this woman who was clearly struggling with something profound. "Tell me about her," Jimmy said, his voice filled with the kind of compassion that can't be scripted. Dr. Chen closed her eyes for a moment, gathering strength. "Her name was Emma. She had a congenital heart defect. I'd been treating her since she was born. She was like my own daughter. So bright, so brave. She never complained, not even during the worst procedures." Jimmy reached over and gently took her hand. "What happened?" "It was supposed to be routine," Dr. Chen continued, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. "I'd done the same surgery hundreds of times, but something went wrong. I don't know what. Everything was perfect, and then it wasn't. Her heart just stopped, and I couldn't fix it. I couldn't fix her broken heart." The audience was completely still. Several people in the front row were wiping their eyes. Behind the cameras, production assistants who had seen hundreds of tapings found themselves emotionally overwhelmed by the raw honesty of this moment. Jimmy squeezed her hand gently. "Dr. Chen, how many lives have you saved?" "It doesn't matter," she replied quickly. "None of that matters when you lose the one that counts the most." "But it does matter," Jimmy said, his voice growing firmer. "Every single life you've saved matters. Every family you've kept together. Every child who grew up because of your hands. Every parent who didn't have to bury their child because you were there. All of that matters. Dr. Chen shook her head. You don't understand. I haven't operated since that day. I can't. Every time I pick up a scalpel, I see her face. I hear her parents crying. I feel her heart stopping under my hands. Jimmy stood up and walked back toward his desk, but instead of sitting down, he opened a drawer and pulled something out. He returned to Dr. Chen and held out a pair of surgical gloves. Put these on, he said quietly. Dr. Chen stared at the gloves as if they were foreign objects. Jimmy, I can't. You can, he said, his voice carrying absolute conviction. Not because you have to, but because those hands were meant to heal. Because Emma wouldn't want your gift to die with her. The camera caught every emotion that crossed Dr. Chen's face. Fear, grief, doubt, and underneath it all, a flicker of the surgeon she used to be. I'm scared, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Of course you are, Jimmy replied, but fear doesn't disqualify you from greatness. It just means you're human. Dr. Chen slowly reached for the gloves. Her hands were shaking as she pulled on the first one, then the second. The familiar feel of the latex seemed to awaken something in her. She flexed her fingers, and for the first time in months, they felt steady. Jimmy walked to center stage and called out to his production team. Can we dim the lights, please? The studio lights gradually lowered until only a soft spotlight illuminated Dr. Chen. In that gentle light, she looked like she was in an operating room again. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. What do you feel? Jimmy asked softly. I feel capable again, she said, wonder in her voice. I feel like a surgeon. You are a surgeon, Jimmy said firmly. You're Dr. Sarah Chen. You've saved over 3,000 lives. You've pioneered techniques that will save thousands more. And Emma? Emma was lucky to have you fighting for her, even if the fight didn't end the way you wanted. Dr. Chen opened her eyes and looked directly at Jimmy. I miss her so much. I know, Jimmy said, and you always will. But missing her doesn't mean you have to stop being who you were meant to be. The audience began to applaud, softly at first, then with growing intensity. But it wasn't the typical late-night television applause. This was recognition of something deeper, the moment when a healer remembered how to heal herself. Dr. Chen stood up slowly, the surgical gloves still on her hands. She walked to where Jimmy stood and embraced him. It was an embrace between two people who understood that some moments transcend entertainment, transcend careers, transcend everything except the fundamental human need to be seen and understood. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you, Jimmy replied, for reminding all of us what courage looks like. As the studio lights came back up, Dr. Chen removed the surgical gloves. But something had changed. The trembling in her hands was gone. The weight in her eyes had lifted, not completely, but enough to let in some light. Dr. Chen, Jimmy said, returning to his more formal hosting voice, but retaining the warmth of their connection. What's next for you? She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. I think it's time to get back to fixing broken hearts. The audience erupted in genuine applause. People stood up, not because they were prompted to, but because they had witnessed something extraordinary. They had seen a woman rediscover her purpose, remember her gift, and choose to continue healing despite her pain. After the show, as the studio emptied and the camera stopped rolling, Jimmy found Dr. Chen in the green room. She was staring at the surgical gloves he had given her, which she had kept. Those are yours to keep, Jimmy said. Why did you have surgical gloves in your desk? She asked with a small laugh. Jimmy smiled. I didn't. I had my assistant run to the nearest hospital during commercial break. Sometimes you have to be willing to break the format to save the person. Dr. Chen looked at him with renewed appreciation. You would have made a good surgeon. Maybe, Jimmy replied, but I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. 6 months later, Jimmy received a package with no return address. Inside was a photo of Dr. Chen in an operating room, wearing the surgical gloves he had given her. On the back, she had written, "Back to fixing broken hearts. Thank you for helping me fix mine. Dr. Sarah Chen." The photo now sits framed in Jimmy's office, a reminder that sometimes the most important work happens not when the cameras are rolling for entertainment, but when they capture the moments that change lives. Dr. Chen went on to establish the Emma Foundation, providing free cardiac care for children who couldn't afford it. She named her first successful surgery after her return Operation Second Chance. And every time she saves a life, she whispers a thank you to Emma, the little girl who taught her that sometimes losing a patient doesn't mean losing your purpose. The episode became one of the most watched segments in Tonight Show history, not because of any celebrity scandal or viral moment, but because viewers recognized something authentic in a world that often feels manufactured. They saw what happens when someone's professional identity shatters and then rebuilds itself, stronger and more compassionate than before. Jimmy never talked publicly about that night in detail. When interviewers asked about it, he would simply say, "Some moments aren't meant to be dissected. They're meant to be honored." But privately, he learned something that night that changed how he approached every show afterward. He learned that his job wasn't just to entertain people, but to create space for them to be human, to be vulnerable, to be seen. The surgical gloves that Dr. Chen wore that night are now displayed in the lobby of the children's hospital where she operates. There's a small plaque beneath them that reads, "Sometimes the best medicine is remembering who you are." And Jimmy Fallon, who made a career out of making people laugh, discovered that sometimes the most powerful moments happen when you stop trying to be funny and start trying to be real. When you stop performing and start caring. When you remember that behind every guest, every story, every laugh, there's a human being who sometimes needs nothing more than to be reminded that they matter. That night on The Tonight Show, Dr. Sarah Chen didn't just put on surgical gloves. She put on her identity again. She remembered that healing hands don't stop being healing hands just because they occasionally can't save everyone. And Jimmy Fallon reminded everyone watching that kindness isn't just a nice gesture. Sometimes it's the difference between someone giving up and someone finding the courage to try again. The show must go on, as they say in entertainment. But sometimes the most important moments happen when the show stops and humanity begins. 3 weeks later, Jimmy received a call that would forever change how he understood the ripple effects of that night. It was Dr. Marcus Williams, the chief of cardiac surgery at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. "Mr. Fallon," Dr. Williams said, his voice thick with emotion, "I need to tell you about Dr. Sarah Chen. What happened on your show, it saved more than just her career." Jimmy listened as Dr. Williams explained that after the episode aired, dozens of surgeons who had been struggling with similar trauma reached out to Dr. Chen. She had unknowingly become a symbol of resilience for medical professionals worldwide who carried the weight of patients they couldn't save. "She started a support group," Dr. Williams continued. "Surgeons from all over the country fly in once a month to attend her sessions. She calls it the Healing Hand Circle. They wear surgical gloves during the meetings, just like she did on your show. It's become their symbol of remembering their purpose." The next day, Jimmy received an email from Dr. Chen herself. She was writing from the operating room where she had just completed a successful surgery on a 6-year-old boy with the same condition Emma had suffered from. "Dear Jimmy," the email read, "I wanted you to know that today marks my 50th successful surgery since our conversation on your show. Each time I scrub in, I think about that moment when you handed me those gloves. You didn't just give me latex and comfort, you gave me permission to be broken and whole at the same time." She went on to explain how the foundation she had started in Emma's memory had grown beyond her wildest expectations. The episode had generated over $2 million in donations, enabling them to provide free cardiac surgeries for underprivileged children across 3 states. "But more than the money," she continued, "your show created a conversation about grief in the medical community that we desperately needed. Doctors aren't supposed to break down. We're supposed to be invincible. You showed the world that our humanity isn't our weakness,
It's our strength." Jimmy kept that email printed and framed next to the photo Dr. Chen had sent him. Together, they served as daily reminders of why he chose to approach his platform the way he did. The surgical gloves from that night became legendary within the medical community. Photos of them circulated on social media with the hashtag #HealingHandsRemember, used by healthcare workers sharing their own stories of loss, recovery, and renewed purpose. Dr. Patricia Rodriguez, a pediatric surgeon from Miami, posted a photo of herself wearing identical gloves with the caption, "Lost my first patient last week. Watch the Jimmy Fallon episode with Dr. Chen 3 times today."
These gloves remind me that my hands were made to heal, even when they can't save everyone. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of medical professionals shared their own photos, their own stories, their own moments of doubt and renewal. The Tonight Show's social media team was amazed by the organic movement that had grown from a single moment of authentic human connection. Dr. Chen began appearing on medical podcasts and at healthcare conferences, not as the pioneering surgeon she had always been known as, but as an advocate for mental health in the medical profession. She spoke openly about the pressure doctors face to remain emotionally detached and how that very detachment can sometimes prevent them from processing trauma in healthy ways. "We spend years learning how to cut into people and put them back together," she would tell audiences, "but no one teaches us how to put ourselves back together when we fail." Her TED Talk, titled "The Surgeon's Heart: When Healers Need Healing," was viewed over 5 million times in its first month. In it, she credited Jimmy's simple act of handing her surgical gloves as the catalyst for her understanding that vulnerability and strength could coexist. Meanwhile, Jimmy found himself thinking differently about every interview he conducted. The experience with Dr. Chen had shown him that behind every guest's success story was often a moment of profound struggle, and that his platform could be a place for healing as much as entertainment. He began incorporating what his team called deeper moments into more interviews, not manufactured drama, but genuine invitations for guests to share more than just their latest projects. The audience response was overwhelmingly positive, with viewers consistently commenting that they felt more connected to the celebrities and public figures who appeared on the show. The Tonight Show's ratings improved, but more importantly to Jimmy, the quality of conversations deepened. Guests began approaching the show differently, knowing it was a place where authenticity was valued over rehearsed anecdotes. 6 months after Dr. Chen's appearance, Jimmy was invited to speak at the American Medical Association's annual conference. Standing before an audience of 5,000 healthcare professionals, he felt the weight of responsibility that came with his platform. "I'm not a doctor," he began, "but I learned something from Dr. Sarah Chen that night that I think applies to all of us, regardless of our profession. I learned that our scars don't disqualify us from greatness. They're proof that we've survived something that tried to break us." The standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes. Later, Jimmy would learn that the AMA had established a new initiative focused on physician mental health, directly inspired by Dr. Chen's story and the conversations it had sparked. Dr. Chen continued to transform the landscape of medical trauma support. Her Healing Hand Circle expanded to include not just surgeons, but nurses, emergency room physicians, and even medical students who were struggling with the emotional weight of their chosen profession. The circles followed a unique format. Participants would share their most difficult cases while wearing surgical gloves, symbolically connecting them to their professional identity even while discussing their most vulnerable moments. At the end of each session, they would remove the gloves together, representing their choice to process their trauma and return to healing. "The gloves represent our capacity to heal," Dr. Chen would explain to new participants. "We put them on to remember who we are, and we take them off to release what we can't control." The program was so successful that it was adopted by hospitals nationwide. Medical schools began incorporating trauma processing and mental health support into their curricula, recognizing that technical skill alone wasn't sufficient preparation for the emotional demands of medical practice.
Jimmy received updates from Dr. Chen regularly, each one reinforcing his belief that television could be a force for positive change when used thoughtfully. Her latest message included a photo from the dedication ceremony of the new Emma Chen Memorial Wing at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, funded entirely by donations that had poured in after their Tonight Show segment. This wing will provide free cardiac care for children whose families can't afford treatment, Dr. Chen had written. Emma's memory is saving lives she never had the chance to meet. In a way, she's still fixing broken hearts. The impact extended beyond the medical community. The episode sparked conversations about trauma and recovery in workplaces across various industries. Companies began implementing mental health support programs, recognizing that professional excellence and emotional well-being weren't mutually exclusive. Jimmy received letters from teachers who had lost students, from police officers struggling with difficult cases, from social workers carrying the weight of children they couldn't save. The surgical gloves had become a symbol of resilience across professions where people dedicate their lives to helping others. One letter particularly moved Jimmy. It was from Sarah Martinez, a high school guidance counselor who had lost a student to suicide. "I watched your episode with Dr. Chen during my darkest hour," she wrote. "I was ready to quit my job, convinced that I had failed in the most fundamental way. But watching her put those gloves back on reminded me that my purpose isn't diminished by the students I can't save, it's defined by the ones I can help." Sarah had started her own support group for education professionals dealing with student trauma and loss. They called it Open Hands, and they used the same principle of symbolic renewal that Dr. Chen had pioneered. The Tonight Show team began tracking the various support groups and initiatives that had grown from that single episode. They documented over 200 organizations across 47 states that directly credited Dr. Chen's story as their inspiration. Jimmy realized that the most significant achievement of his career wasn't any award he had won or celebrity he had interviewed, but this unexpected moment when he had chosen empathy over entertainment and sparked a movement of healing that continued to grow. Dr. Chen's final update to Jimmy came on the one-year anniversary of her appearance on the show. She was writing from the operating room again, but this time she was training a young resident who was struggling with confidence after a difficult case. "I handed her surgical gloves today," Dr. Chen wrote, "and I told her what you told me, that fear doesn't disqualify us from greatness, it just proves we're human. The circle continues." The episode with Dr. Sarah Chen became a case study in medical schools, communication courses, and media ethics programs. It demonstrated how authentic human connection could transcend entertainment and create lasting positive change. But for Jimmy, the most important lesson was simpler, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is hand someone the tools to remember who they are, and trust them to use those tools to heal themselves and others. The surgical gloves are still in the Children's Hospital lobby, now accompanied by hundreds of photos from Healing Hands support groups around the world. The plaque has been updated to include a quote from Jimmy's AMA speech. "Our scars don't disqualify us from greatness. They're proof that we've survived something that tried to break us." And Dr. Sarah Chen continues to operate, to teach, to heal, and to remind other healers that their humanity isn't their weakness. It's the very thing that makes them capable of touching hearts, both literally and figuratively, in ways that pure technical skill never could. The show went on that night, and it continues to go on. But the humanity that Jimmy chose to embrace in that moment continues to ripple outward, touching lives in ways he never could have imagined when he knelt beside a broken surgeon and reminded her that she still had the power to heal. Years later, when Jimmy looks back on his career, he knows that among all the celebrities, all the viral moments, all the laughter and applause, there will always be one moment that defines everything else. The night he handed surgical gloves to a woman who had forgotten she was a healer and watched her remember. Dr. Sarah Chen still sends him a photo every year on the anniversary of that show. Always the same pose, her hands in surgical gloves, ready to save another life. And Jimmy keeps every single one,
a growing collection of proof that sometimes the most important healing happens not in operating rooms, but in the simple moments when one human being reminds another of who they truly are. The final photo arrived last week. Dr. Chen, now 50 years old, standing with 23 young surgeons she has mentored through their own moments of doubt and trauma. All of them wearing surgical gloves, all of them ready to heal, all of them proof that broken doesn't mean finished. On the back, she had written, "The hands that heal are the hands that remember they can still touch hearts. Thank you for reminding me. Forever grateful, Dr. Sarah Chen." Jimmy smiled as he placed the photo with all the others.
Tomorrow night, there would be another show, another guest, another opportunity to choose between entertainment and humanity. He knew which choice he would make, because that's what real healing looks like, not just fixing what's broken, but helping others remember they have the power to fix it themselves. And sometimes that healing starts with something as simple as a pair of surgical gloves and the reminder that our hands, no matter how much they've trembled, still have the capacity to touch lives. The Tonight Show continues, but it carries with it the legacy of that moment when Jimmy Fallon proved that the most powerful performances happen not when you follow the script, but when you throw it away to save someone's soul. When you remember that behind every professional success or failure, there's a human being who sometimes just needs to be reminded of who they are. And Dr. Sarah Chen continues to heal hearts, both literally and figuratively, one surgery at a time, one conversation at a time, one pair of surgical gloves at a time. Because healing hands never really forget. They just sometimes need someone to remind them that they still have the power to make everything whole again.